What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this will be a bit of a shorter one. Basically, we held a locals in Yugi-Kaiba format last night in the Discord server. Link in the description down below if you want to hop in there and play more games in these old Retro Yu-Gi-Oh formats. But we hold a locals every week, and normally I stream them. But last night I wasn't feeling the best. I had a bit of a cough and was a bit sick. So today I'm feeling a bit better, and I figured, I want to get the locals out there, and show people what the games are like. So I figured that I'd show off the finals match from the locals in this video and sort of just, discuss it, go over it. We'll be doing the dual replay here for it. And I'm actually going to show both hands, and so that way we can sort of discuss both players' sides of things as we go through it, which is a bit different than my normal dual replays, but I figure it could be an interesting thing to do. So let's just dive into the game, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please definitely subscribe if you enjoy this sort of retro Yu-Gi-Oh content. But this is going to be a match between Mail with the Ratos on that, and I think just like sort of a more normal deck with Bobby Bodega on that, so maybe like Soul Control or just standard beatdown sort of thing. But it looks like it's actually going to start as a game, because normally, if the Mill player draws Ultimate Offering, that's usually like pretty much the end of the game. It's like very much in their favor. But as is, Aratos has not drawn that yet, so they're just going to set a Wall of Illusion, set a Woboku, and pass. And Bobby Bodega is going to draw here, go for Pot of Greed right away. And yeah, they're just going to bring out a Neo here and hit into the Wall of Illusion. They have the read that this is probably a defender, and, it does bounce back the Neo to hand, so Ratos can't use something like Fisher or something on it. So that's pretty nice for Bobby Bodega. Whoops. But yeah, it's a bit of a tough spot for them. They do have reinforcements and a Fisher, so they can get over the Wall of Illusion. And Eraser's just going to pass. So it looks like they're just going to potentially take a hit here or just use Woboku to sort of soak up a hit that way. But they are indeed going to take this hit. I think that is the right play. You want to save Woboku for when it really does matter. And especially in game one, people likely won't have the burn cards or things like that unless they're playing a burn deck. So I think you can feel pretty safe in that. They're going to activate a sort of Villain Light, set an Aquamador here and pass. And the reason why they do this is because they don't really have much follow-up to this Aquamador if the Aquamador does get cleared. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Bobby's going to think about this for a bit and then just pass back to Aratos. They don't have any way to clear the swords, so each player is just going to pass back here for a bit. Aratos draws a Pot of Greed. They're going to go for it because they really do need to draw an Ultimate Offering. That card really turns on the deck, and they do not get it yet. And the swords will expire here. Raigeki's drawn very good. They're going to set a change here, pass back to Bobby. Bobby's going to bring out a Lodgin, and Erases will just trap hole that, because if a Reinforcements is in the back row there, then Bobby can clear the Mador, get in for damage, and Erases is already down a little bit of damage here. I think that makes a lot of sense. Bobby's going to take 300 from that. They're going to set another pass back to Aratos. Aratos draws another defender in the form of Spirit of the Heart, but they're going to set a Man-Eater Bug here, start eating into Bobby's monsters, which I think makes a lot of sense. Bobby's going to bring out this Lodgin here and Fisher away the Aquamador, hit into the set, and this is why the Man-Eater Bug made sense, because if Bobby did use up reinforcements on a defender here, then they could then get in for more damage. With the Man-Eater Bug, Aratus will be able to pop that Neo. Bobby's going to set another pass back. And Erases is actually going to change of heart, get in for 1800, which, can happen. Occasionally, as a stall mill deck, you do want to sort of put on some aggressive pressure to potentially go for a damage win near the end of the game. But they're just going to tribute over that Lodge in there for a Gyakuteno Megami, which is a great defender in this format, and pass back to Bobby. Bobby's going to think about this for a bit, and there are a couple options here. They're going to go for change, flip up the Gyakuteno, and then they're just going to hit him for 1800. I think this is the right play here, as, you sort of want to play around a trap hole. So then they're going to tribute summon out the Summon Skull here. I think maybe they should have honestly set it, because now it's vulnerable to things like Fisher and Ratos' hand. And, I mean, you've got a trap hole to deal with if Ratos brings out like a giant silver stone trying to hit over your set. So I think, honestly, they should have set it. It doesn't really play in around trap hole much, but this play doesn't play around trap hole either. So, yeah, I think that this might be a bit of a misplay here, and a Fisher will come down. But it might not be like a super major one, as Bobby does have more Summon Skulls in hand. They're going to bring out a Battle Ox, hit into the set. It's a Spirit. They're going to reinforcements over that, and then just pass back to Aratos. Rage is going to set a Spirit of the Harp in a trap hole, pass back. And honestly, this is maybe a reason to have held the reinforcements, because then you can use it to get more aggressive later. And if Ratos does want to safeguard against an aggressive push, they have to commit more monsters to board. And if you draw something like Raigeki, you can clear those away in one fell swoop. So I'm not sure exactly how I feel about using the reinforcements there. I mean, if you think that a Ratos is on low defenders, then I guess that makes some sense. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But anyways, Bobby's going to set a Mana Bug here, pass back to Ratos. I think this makes a lot of sense. Just use the Mana Bug to pop the Spirit, and then next turn, if Ratos does set another monster, you do... Oh, that's the... Okay, they only had one reinforcements. Then, yeah, a bit rough here. You do have Reborn to bring back some of the Skull, though, to get even more aggressive. But there comes a Raigeki from a Ratos, which makes sense. You want to use that when the opponent has a monster set that could potentially be like a Mana Bug or something. And Bobby's going to bring back the Summoned Skull here, hit over the Spirit, and then just set one, pass back to a Ratos. This is kind of a tough spot to be in. Like, the way that I generally like to play against stall mill decks is you wait for when you can actually make a majorly aggressive push, and then you go for that push. Now, if you've gotten your opponents to a low resource situation, then just keep getting aggressive. That's what you got to do. But if your opponent's in a situation where they've got a lot of resources on hand, I don't necessarily think it's good to play like the 1-for-1 removal game, as that can put you behind later in the game. As the stall deck does have some inevitability, you want to save your 1-for-1 removals for when they'll actually be the most useful. But I mean, it's tough playing against stall mill, and each situation is kind of different in its own right, and a bit iffy. So I don't know. I'm not sure how I would have played it in the moment, but yeah, setting the Summon Skull there, definitely the right play here. You got to do that. And we're just going to set these swords. They don't really need it right now. Summon Skull will get flipped up into that trap hole there. And Bobby's just going to pass back to Ratos. Ratos draws a Soul Exchange to pair with Gyakuteno. So it's looking really good for them. This is probably just the end of the game, even though there's no Ultimate Offering in the hand yet. I feel like, yeah, Bobby's bricked a lot here. And then there's the Ultimate Offering. So, yeah, this is pretty much the end of the game. Once Ultimate Offering can get set up like this, there's very little you can do against it, especially if you get a lot of monsters in hand with the stall mill player. So, yeah, kind of rough here. Bobby's just going to tribute off that Mana Bug, setting the Summon Skull there. And I feel like you maybe could have just waited. Like, if Aratus wants to clear the bug, they're using up some removal, or they're switching a monster to attack. So, ultimately, it's not the worst. And this does open you up to, like, Soul Exchange plays here. So, yeah, I think this is pretty much the end of the game. I'm just going to blaze through this because there isn't really too much to comment on. Like, I don't think that there's really any way for Bobby to win here, which is unfortunate. And occasionally you do wind up in these situations when you're facing a stall mill player where it's just like, there's basically no outs for you. Now, if you don't know their hand, you got to fight valiantly on because maybe they're bricking on things. But yeah, this is just a slow death on Bobby's part. There's not really much they can do to clear that last 4,000 bit of damage. Unless they can like force Ratos to use Ultimate Offering like 8 times, but there's very little chance of that happening. So Bobby's going to hit into the wall there, switch their wall to defense, resummon out the Lodge-in, and then pass back. So yeah, not much to do here. And also card destruction coming down when you've got such a low deck count is kind of inevitable. And yeah, having to use up the Raigeki for 1-for-1 removal is really unfortunate. Ratos will just, Ultimate Offering out a monster. And I believe that all 3 reinforcements are gone. Yep, all 3 reinforcements are gone. So yeah, you just don't have enough removal to eat through what Ratos has left here. So yeah, kind of rough. But that's what makes Stall Mill such a tough matchup in Yugi-Kaiba format. Because there is just this sort of inevitability, and you've got to know really when to either get super aggressive, and you've got to know when to also just sort of, bide your time and wait. So, but the card destruction is going to come down there, and that will indeed be the end of the game, as, Bobby just had too many cards in hand. They couldn't actually offload them onto field because their back row is clogged, and, there's only so many monsters you can bring up per turn. But that's what happens against a Stall Mill deck, so it's a very tough deck to play against, and that's just sort of how it goes a lot of the time. So I can't blame Bobby for, that play there, because, I mean, it just really is tough to beat a stall mill deck once it's gotten that sort of leverage there. And very minor misplays can add up over the course of the game. But it looks like Bobby has sided in some cards here to combat the stall mill threat. Trap Master, especially good against those ultimate offerings. So very good to see that there. Rage is going to open up with a Sword Revealing Light, just revealing the set. If it was Trap Master, then that would have been really bad for Bobby. If it was Man Your Bug, it also would have been bad. And it looks like Aratus is actually going to get aggressive here, which is something that stall mill decks can do. They can side into more aggressive strategies and sort of take their opponent by surprise. Bobby's going to bring out a Lodge here just to wall off that Battle Ox, which I think makes a lot of sense. Aratus is going to set a Man Your Bug here to potentially pop the Lodge next turn. Also set this Trap Hole here. I'm always going to think about this. I think they were probably thinking about whether they go for the Dark Hole or potentially a Sword of Feeling Light or something like that. But yeah, I think it's probably best just to bide your time and wait. You do take a fair amount of damage here, which is unfortunate. But I think it's just what you kind of got to do. And yeah, they're going to drop down to 4150 here. Bobby draws a Stop Defense, another great card to side in against a Stall Mill deck. They're going to fire the Dark Hole there, set a Trap Master, fire a Sword of Revealing Light, and pass back. I'm not necessarily sure the Sword of Revealing Light was needed there. You could probably save it for a better sort of situation. Because, I mean, I guess you want to save your Trap Master to tribute out a Summoned Skull over. But, I don't know. I feel like you could just flip up Trap Master next turn, pop a back row, then potentially tribute out the Summoned Skull. Or just hit in for 500 with Trap Master. I mean, it just depends on what your opponent does. I'm not really sure the Swords was needed there. Anyways, Bobby's going to go for a pot. Draw Soul Exchange, that's really good. Now they can pair that with the Skull. They also got a Neo to get even more aggressive here. So they'll get in for 2200, which is a fair amount of damage. And that's like a 4-turn clock, which is pretty good. Likely won't last, but it may force Aratos to use that Raigeki early. They're going to set a Waboku here, and the Waboku's probably going to get used early. Or not. They're just going to take the 2200. A little bit risky, given that a lot of the time you side in burn cards against Stall Mill. So this could potentially backfire a little bit. But it looks like Rage is going to go for a Raigeki here. And then pass back to Bobby. Looks like Bobby's just got another sword, which is honestly pretty good. And Aratos is just going to set this Man Eater Bug, pass back to Bobby. Bobby's going to Soul Exchange, bring out Summon Skull. That will get met with a Trap Hole because Aratos did not have a way to remove that on their following turn. Change Part with the Summon Skull is pretty good here. And Bobby's going to bring out a Battle Ox here, hitting in for 1700. And Aratos is actually going to take that. It's, again, a little bit risky. If Bobby sided into, like, Triple Okazi, then Triple Okazi will end the game over the course of just drawing them. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly fine. Aratos is up a game, so, you know, they can afford to take risks like that. Battle Ox is going to hit in to the Giant Soldier Stone there. Reinforcement will allow it to get over. And this might be a pretty big turn for Ratos here. They're going to change hard targeting the set and flip it up. That's Man Your Bug. They'll be able to pop the Battle Ox there. They're going to hit in for 450 just in case their opponent has a Trap Hole left. And they're going to bring out this Summoned Skull. And I guess they do this because they don't want to use up their Roboku if their opponent, like, potentially, like, summons out a monster just to hit over their set. But yeah, somewhat risky, not too risky though. But yeah, Reaper is in as well to pair with the Soul Exchange, which I think makes a fair amount of sense. You get to snipe a back row potentially, so it's pretty good. And Eraser is going to attack in with the Battle Ox in damage step. They'll flip up Reaper the cards, and Aratos will use the reinforcements here. Now, Bobby will be able to target the other back row because the targeting actually happens after damage calculation, which is when reinforcements activating the damage step before Reaper will get its effect off. So yeah, it should be able to pop the other set here. It looks like they missed that, which maybe will come up, maybe not. But like, okay, it looks like they caught it afterwards. That's ultimately fine because, yeah, Aratos probably would have just set this Waboku to replace the Waboku that they lost. But looks like it won't ultimately matter. They're just going to bring in a Lodge in, set this Waboku here. Fisher will deal with the Lodge in, but Bobby's in a pretty rough spot here. Yeah, just summoning out the wall, putting them on a 2-turn clock is pretty good. And also you've got the Waboku to potentially bounce back a monster summoned out to hit over the wall next turn. So a bit worrying for Bobby here. They might just have to preemptively Raigeki that next turn. Looks like they've got this Battle Ox though, and they'll be able to hit in for 17, or they're just going, yeah, they're going to Raigeki. That makes sense because Battle Locks plus Reinforcements is the end of the game here. And this also preserves the Battle Locks on field. Boku will get used up. It had to be used up there. And Raze is just going to set a Trap Hole and a Soul Exchange. So it looks like this game will be going to game 3 here. Or not. Okay. So I guess that was a bit of a misplay on Bobby's part, but I don't think it will actually matter here because, yeah, that's just the end of the game. Okay, so it didn't matter, but they could have had turn a game earlier if they activated Reinforcements in the damage step. But anyways, very good game 2 there. And now seeing that Aratos sided into a more beatdown strategy, Bobby might go potentially off the complete anti-stall tactics. Although they may like sort of bet that Aratos will slide back into more of a stall strategy. So very interesting sort of mind games going on in game 3. And that does happen in these stall mill matchups. Looks like Bobby's going to remain on the stall strat. And with that Summon Skull, maybe Aratos is on more of an aggressive deck. We'll have to wait and see. A Neo will come down and hit into that set there. It is a Wall of Illusion, so that'll bounce the Neo back to hand. And Bobby's just going to set this stop defense here, pass back to Aratos. Aratos is just going to get aggressive by attacking in with the wall. Then they can set a Trap Hole here, pass back to Bobby. If Bobby brings out a monster, the Trap Hole will deal with that. But it looks like Bobby's just going to set 2 and pass. This might be a good time to Soul Exchange, but it looks like Aratos is just going to switch the wall to defense, pass back. And Bobby's going to flip up the Trap Master, pop the Reinforcements. Aratos is just going to chain that because why not? And a Neo will come down. That will get Trap Hold. And the wall will get fissured. Now, something you can do when facing a wall is attack like a Trap Master into the wall. But if Aratos is on the more aggressive strategy, then that could definitely come back to bite you. So I think fissuring the wall here isn't a bad play by any means. And Bobby will attack in for 500. Razor's just going to bring out a Giant Soldier Stone, hit into the Trap Master. That will go through. Bobby's going to take 800 here. And they're just going to bring out a Battle Axe, which will play right into that Trap Hole there. And Razor's in a pretty good spot here. They're going to attack in for 1800. And think about whether to attack in with the Giant Soldier here. I think if you're Aratos, you probably just hit in because you've got enough aggressive pressure here to potentially kill your opponent. And if you have the read your opponent's not on Woboku, then they might not have a way to stop you after that. So they're just going to hit in with the Giant Soldier. Giant Soldier is vulnerable, but you do have ways to deal with whatever they bring out to clear it next turn. Looks like Bobby's just going to set 1, pass back to Aratos. Aratos just going to hit into the set. Maneurbug will eat that Lodge in there and attack in for 1300. This is looking pretty bad for Bobby, and a remove trap will not help matters. Bobby's just going to bring out this Neo the Magic Swordsman, which has 1700 attack, which will be able to get over the Giant Soldier, but they got a lot of life points to chip away here. And it looks like the Soul Exchange is going to come down for a Summon Skull, and Razor's just going to set a Monster Reborn pass. So this is looking very bad for Bobby. Bobby does have some options here. None of the cards that they have right now are really super helpful here. Stop Defense and Remove Trap are kind of dead, given that Aratos sided in to more aggressive strategy here. But you could potentially Reborn a monster. I mean, I don't think, yeah, so you'd have to Reborn a monster probably. Tribute off for Summon Skull, hit into their Summon Skull, and then Reinforcements maybe. I don't know. There's not really a good option. You could also Reborn back like a Wall of Illusion and just wall up that way, but yeah, there's not much they can really do here. They're going to Reborn back that Wall of Illusion and wall up that way. And that might be... Okay, they are going to go for the Summon Skull play here. Hit in to Aratos' Summon Skull. Reinforcements in the damage step to clear that Summon Skull. But you're in a really risky spot here. And there's no real way around that risk. Reborn to bring back Summon Skull. Plus the Fissure will indeed do it. So that will indeed be the end of the game. And I mean, that was a pretty quick one, given that it was a stall mill match. And I do think that, like, this shows the power of stall mill smoke screening into a more aggressive strategy, because 2 cards here were just dead against Aratos' updated list here, and that can happen. And in Yugi-Kaiba format, resources really matter a lot, so if you are just drawing dead cards, that can be really, really bad for you in the long run. But I hope that this was pretty illustrative of how neat these games can be. Even if Stall Mill is not everyone's favorite deck, I mean, it is a bit of a grind, especially in game 1 and maybe in games 2 and 3 if they do keep on the Stall Mill strat. But it is a very, very good deck in Yugi-Kaiba format, and one to potentially be aware of, and one that you really have to like fire on all cylinders to actually be able to beat. And even then, you might not be able to beat it. So definitely a tier 1 deck by, all means. And also a deck that often is not really as represented because people don't like to play it, but it's a deck that does exist and one that you need to be prepared for. So hopefully this video will potentially help you prepare for that matchup in the future. But if you enjoyed the video, definitely leave a like down below, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGF from Zero, and I'm signing off.